Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Edmonton Construction Association, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to educate yourself on the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. As many of you know, my name is Taylor Lewis, and I am the Education Coordinator for the Edmonton Construction Association. The Canada-Alberta Job Grant is an employer-driven training program where employers and government share the cost of training employees to increase their knowledge and skills to meet the needs of Alberta's changing economy. Over the next hour or so, Jeff Cowling from the Government of Alberta will be educating you on the benefits and advantages that are included with the job grant. To end off the presentation, Jeff will touch on a new program called Alberta Jobs Now. Throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat section at the bottom of your screen, and we will review them once the presentation is finished. Thank you, Jeff. I'll pass it over to you, and you can come on off mute there.
Welcome everybody. So my name is Jeff Cowling. I just wanted to give everybody a bit of a heads up today. I am down south of Calgary, out in the country. So if the screen starts to freeze, it's probably me, and I have my video off today just to make sure I have enough bandwidth. The agenda for today, we're going to do the introduction, the program changes effective February 18, 2021, eligibility criteria, grant process, program funding, help for employers, followed up by questions. Also, when we do the questions, or before we do the questions, I'm going to very briefly go over the Jobs Now program just to give you some very high level information and a web address to get more information on that program. So the Canada-Alberta Job Grant funds employers demanding training. It's a tool in addressing Alberta's jobs and skills mismatch. Employers determine what training is necessary to meet the business goals and objectives of their organization. Employers also determine who will get training. This employer-driven program ensures the training reflects the skills that you guys are looking for. This is an overview of how the Canada-Alberta Job Grant works. We'll explore the process in more detail as we move forward, but for now, this diagram provides a quick overview of the various steps. Before applying, employers need to identify their training needs and identify an eligible training provider. Then they need to submit an application form. Applicants can pay for training at any time. However, training cannot start until the application is received. Once an application is received, trainees can start training. However, it's recommended to submit your application a minimum of 30 days in advance of training, the training start date, to allow for the application process clarification. For an application to be considered received, all trainee must sign and submit their trainee declaration that is sent to the personnel email on the application form. When trainees finish their training, the employer submits a training completion form to receive one payment for eligible cost. The note on this is employers will still have the option to receive two payment installation if they choose. If you have a question, please contact Canada-Alberta Job Grant for more information. There are three major policy changes. These changes are temporary and in effect for 1 year. Training no longer needs to be incremental This means that training is no longer required to be in addition to the employer's regular operational training. Employed family members are now eligible for training. For example, a business that has a family member, such as a wife or daughter, who is employed at the business, is now eligible for training under Canada-Alberta Job Grant. Some business owners are eligible to train themselves. In order for a business owner to be eligible for training, they must have 4 or fewer employers, including all owners. For example, 2 owners with 2 employees or 1 owner with 3 employees. The first thing to note is that these changes are permanent program changes. Our trainees can start their training once the CAJG team receives the application. For applications to be considered received, Canada-Alberta Job Grant must receive all signed trainee declarations. For example, if there are 5 trainees on the application, all 5 declarations must be received before the application is considered received. 2, the employer no longer has to wait until their application is submitted to pay for their training. However, training cannot start until after the application is received. We do recommend that the applicant take caution and not pay for training until the application is approved. If their application is declined, they'll bear all financial costs. Training provider course information is no longer required to be posted on the website. However, applicants are still required to submit a quote with their application. Customized training is now eligible. Fees such as CPA membership is now eligible. Some of the ineligible fees before still remain, such as software, hardware that would be used to run the business. Employee eligibility employers. The Canada-Alberta Job Grant is available to all private and not-for-profit employers in Alberta. Canada-Alberta Job Grant is also available to Indigenous governments, 2 Crown corporations, and sole proprietors. The program is available to businesses of all sizes across the province. Extra. Employers must have an Alberta Corporation Access Number. A federally incorporated or extra-provincially employers must be extra-provincially registered to obtain an ACAN and certified of registration. The number is on your incorporation documents. Since sole proprietors do not have an ACAN, they must establish that they have and maintain an account with WCB. If they are WC exempt, they must submit other sole proprietor information. Since sole proprietors do not have ACAN, they must establish that they do have a WCB account. Note, public sector employees, for example, municipalities, are not eligible for Canada-Alberta Job Grant funding. Unregistered businesses are also not eligible for funding. Please note that if you are applying for training for an unemployed Albertan, that person must be hired by your business. If it is the responsibility of employers to determine training needed and who will get trained. Eligible trainees can be existing employees, family members or business owners, incorporated sole proprietor or proprietors with 4 or fewer employees, Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and refugees. Some employers may choose to target and train unemployed workers for a position. This may include unemployed workers in receipt of employment insurance benefits. EI trainees are eligible, but the applicant is required to declare that the status on their application form. Without proper declaration, trainees may lose their EI benefits as a result of participating in training under Canada-Alberta Job Grant. Something like a job offer would show that an employer's intention to hire a trainee once the trainee is complete. Persons protected under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act are eligible. 100% of eligible training for the cost of the value of $15,000 per individual per year when the trainee is unemployed. This increases the incentive to train, hire unemployed Albertans and helps unemployed Albertans receive the training they need to secure a job. The trainee is still selected by the employer. Employers must have a job available and intend to hire that participant after training. Employers hiring and training an unemployed Albertan will be reimbursed the full training cost up to $15,000 per year. In addition, the unemployed trainee will have been hired by the employer no more than 4 weeks prior to the employer signing and submitting the Canada-Alberta Job Grant application. To verify, the employer must submit a letter of employment or a conditional offer. Trainee must submit documentation as proof of unemployment, either recent record of employment, ROE, or an EI benefit statement showing a claim start date or other documentation deemed acceptable by Canada-Alberta Job Grant as found in our guidelines. When hiring an unemployed Albertan, the employer must prepay for the training. The unemployed trainee must not prepay for the training. Temporary foreign workers, those with temporary work permits, students here on educational visa are not eligible for the program. Company owners of businesses with 5 or more staff, including all owners, unemployed family members, and any person who is not employed by the employer once the training is completed. The top 10 types of training are project management, leadership, sales, health and safety, productivity, computer skills, financial bookkeeping, driver education, supply chain logistics, and health and wellness. There are no restrictions on the employer's choice of training providers. Example includes post-secondary institutions, private consultants, industry associations, unions. As an out-of-province training provider is one who is based in another province or country. The training may be delivered in Alberta, but if the training provider is not based in Alberta, you must provide a brief explanation stating why you cannot take the training with a company that is based in Alberta with your application form. This must be submitted with every application form, even if you have received funding for the training provider or course below. The GOA does not mandate a list of eligible training providers or provides recommendations. For more information on educational programs and training providers, you can go to occinfo@alice.ab.ca. Only direct training costs are eligible. These are limited to tuition fees, mandatory student fees, textbooks, software, and other required materials For example, safety equipment for a safety certificate course and examination fees. Assistance with some travel costs is outlined in the application guide. Examples of ineligible training costs include memberships, recreation fees, healthcare fees, childcare, living allowance. Any asset your business already has or needs to operate such as computers, phones, and office worksite supplies. The intent is to provide access to training for rural participants who would otherwise not have access to the equivalent or similar training. The training must occur in Alberta for travel assistance. Eligible training. Training must be short-term. Training can begin only after an applicant is received. Training must be a minimum of 21 hours, completed with a 52-week period after the training start date. Courses less than 21 hours can be bundled to achieve the minimum eligibility requirements. Type of training. Training can be on-site, in classroom, part-time, or online, but it all has to be delivered by a third-party training provider. Ineligible training includes self-study for an exam, audiobooks, instructional DVDs. Apprenticeship programs are not eligible under the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. They are funded by the Apprenticeship and Industry Training in IAE. There are many other grants, bursaries, and funding options available. However, preparation for entry into apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship would be all the other requirements are met. Training funded under the Government of Alberta program is not eligible for the Canada-Alberta Job Grant. Program funding model. The grant program is co-funded by the government and the employers. In case of training, current employers will contribute at least 1/3 of the training costs, and the government will pay the other 2/3 to a maximum of $10,000 per employee. Employers hiring and training an unemployed Albertan will be reimbursed the full training cost, up to $15,000 per trainee. Unemployed Albertans are trainees that are currently underemployed for more than 30 consecutive days, or new hires who have worked for the employer for 4 weeks or less and were previously unemployed for 30 consecutive days. To verify, the employer must submit one of the following: a conditional offer of employment or a letter of employment. Documents must also be submitted as proof of the trainee's unemployed status. Recent record of employment, ROE, an itemized statement or of employment insurance, EI benefits, claim in a calendar year. Where an unemployed person does not have the above proof of unemployment, for example, out of the labor force for a significant period of time, please contact Canada-Alberta Job Grant Program, and the phone number is 780-638-9424 within Edmonton. If you're outside of Edmonton, the number is 1-855-638-9424. Funding cap on employers. Applications are reviewed based on the data the application is received, with the exception of applications for unemployed trainees, which will be assessed on a priority basis. We've heard from small business community that they feared large employers with HR departments capable of handling the paperwork would use the grant fund quickly. To give more employers access to funding, there is an individual employer cap of $300,000 of grant per year, with a maximum of $10,000 per trainee. This is a side-by-side comparison of funding provided for a trainee training current employees and for training previously unemployed hire. The question is, will the trainee funding cap be changed if the employment status changes? If the trainee's first application in the fiscal year is as an unemployed trainee, they are eligible for $15,000 government contribution in that fiscal year. If they do not use the full amount of their first application, they are eligible to apply on the second application. If the second application is as an unemployed trainee, they are still eligible to apply for the maximum of $15,000 government contribution for the current fiscal year. If the trainee's first application in the first fiscal year is as an employed trainee, they are eligible for $10,000 government contribution in that fiscal year. If they do not use the full amount on their first application, they are eligible to apply on the second application. If the second application is as an unemployed trainee, they will be eligible for an additional $5,000 up to the maximum of $15,000 government contribution for the current fiscal year. There will never be a situation where a trainee is eligible for more than $15,000 government contribution per fiscal year. A scenario with employed trainees. Let's look at an example. An employer needs to recruit 5 warehouse supervisors. There are good applicants from the existing staff within the warehouse experience. However, they will need some skills training. For example, computer software training or leadership from an external provider to allow them to get the job. The cost of the training will be $15,000 per worker. Cost of training 5 workers would be $15,000 times the 5 workers. So that would be $7,500. If the employer applies for and receives a Canada-Alberta Job Grant, up to $1,000 per worker or 2/3 of the $5,000 could be covered. The employer pays the remaining 1/3 at $2,500. Workers get the training they need to be hired and be successful. And then this job site will be post for success. Let's look at a second example where the costs exceed a maximum eligible amount. If training 1 employee costs $17,000, the grant contributions 2/3 or $11,333. Since $10,000 is the maximum grant contribution, the employer would be responsible for paying all training costs above $10,000. The employer would contribute $7,000. Where you have employed or unemployed trainees. Technology in your industry is changing quickly. and you have 5 workers that need training in order to keep ahead of the curve. 2 of the 5 trainees were hired 3 weeks ago, and after being unemployed for 6 and 9 weeks respectively, they will also need basic safety training before they can start work. The cost of technological training, sorry, that was a hard word to say, is $1,200 per employee. At 5 employees is $6,000. The safety training will cost $500 per employee. At 2 employees, that's $1,000. The total cost is $7,000. Canada-Alberta Job Grant will cover 2/3 of the cost of the training for these 3 employees, $2,400. Since they meet the Canada-Alberta Job Grant definition of unemployed, 100% of the cost of the training and safety training will be covered for the 2 unemployed trainees, $3,400. Canada-Alberta Job Grant's definition of unemployed. Both were not working, actively seeking employment, and entitled to work in Alberta. Both were unemployed for at least 30 consecutive days or 6 to 9 weeks. Both were hired by the employer for no more than 4 weeks prior to signing and submitting the Canada-Alberta Job Grant application. In case they have been hired 3 weeks ago, out of the total training investment, $7,000, Canada-Alberta Job Grant would contribute $5,800 and the employer would contribute $1,200. In this scenario, the employer will have to complete 2 application forms. The grant process. Application forms. Employers access the forms through the Canada-Alberta Job Grant website. This is an important website, so if you have your pen, please write it down. It's www.alberta.ca/Canada-Alberta-Job-Grant. And again, at the end of this, and when we send out this presentation, you'll be able to get it there. Applicants are encouraged to submit their application form at least 30 days before the training commences. This is to ensure processing time, approval time, timelines are observed, which are required prior to the starting of training. A completed application will make for a faster processing time. So please email if you are unsure of anything on your application form. We're here to help. There are 2 different application forms that can be used to apply for the Canada-Alberta Job Grant, depending on the employment status and the trainee. Applications for employed trainees. This application is for trainees that are currently employed by the employer. Trainees that have been unemployed for over 30 days or less prior to employment with the employer. Applications for unemployed trainees. This application is for trainees that are currently unemployed for more than 30 consecutive days. New hires who have worked for the employer for 4 weeks or less and were previously unemployed for more than 30 consecutive days. Groups of staff that exact same training might be included on the same application form. However, if it is a previously unemployed staff member that must be on the unemployed trainee form, employed and unemployed trainees cannot blend into the same form. Applications for unemployed Albertans will be given priority processing. There is a separate application form for employers who have hired and are training unemployed Albertans, since a higher financial incentive will be offered. Make sure you complete the correct application based on who you're training, if you're training several employees, you could potentially be submitting one of each. If employed or unemployed trainees are blended on the same application form, the application will be returned to you. Employed and unemployed trainees have their specific forms. Online applications. The way the employer submits applications to the Canada-Alberta Job Grant programs has changed. Labor recently introduced an online application system. The system was introduced to make applying for the Canada-Alberta Job Grant easier. There are several benefits of the online application system, which include a faster method to apply for Canada-Alberta Job Grant program, elimination of mailing times and effort, status of applications can be viewed online. This will increase efficiency of the application review. Electronic signatures are also now accepted. With the introductions of Labor Workforce Grant Portal, Canada-Alberta Job Grant will no longer be accepting paper applications. So that's an important note. All new applications have to be submitted via the online portal. The exception for paper forms is for employers who originally submitted an application on paper and will be required to finish the grant process on paper with a training completion form. Please refer to the receiving payments after applying on paper section of this website for more details. There will be a grace period when the online portal launches for Canada-Alberta Job Grant. The program area will accept paper applications for employed trainees and unemployed trainees for approximately 30 days. Staff are available to support employers through the change. If employers need help navigating the online system, they can contact the processing center for guidance. This is the online application overview. It also has the website that you can go to. So enter your application information and hit the submit button. Training reimbursement. The Canada-Alberta Job Grant is a reimbursement program. Training can only begin after the application is received. Employers must pay all training costs up front. The applicant will only be reimbursed for approved training that takes place after the date on which the grant application is received and was paid. For after the application was submitted. If the application is declined, the employer will be notified and any training costs incurred will not be covered. The Canada-Alberta Job Grant has simplified the payment process for employers. Employers fill out one form and receive one grant payment. The training completion form must be submitted within 30 days of completing the training. Itemized receipts in Canadian dollars must be submitted. If a trainee does not complete the training program, the employer will still get reimbursed the full 2/3 provided that they submit all required forms and is beyond their control. They would simply indicate on the completed form that the trainee did not complete the training. If a trainee does not start the training, the employer will not get reimbursed. Canada-Alberta Job Grant realized that receiving one funding allocation may not meet all the employer's needs. This is why employers still have the option to receive 2 payments of Canada-Alberta Job Grant funds if they choose. If you require interim reimbursement, please contact us for instructions. And again, the numbers are 1-855-638-9422. Or if you're in Edmonton, at 780-638-9424. The email address is jobgrant, all one word, @gov.ab.ca. Employers will receive 50% of the government contribution for each of these programs, or each of these payments. Employers must track training expenses where applicable for tax purposes. If a trainee does not start the training, the employer will not get a refund. Employers who receive tuition refunds from a training provider will be required to return any government contributions. Help for employers. Employers can get help with the application form. An application guide, tip sheet, and checklist on the application processes are available on the website to assist employers. And again, you see the website there. Workforce consultants, regionally based around the province, are able to promote the program. And again, that's part of my job, is I promote the program to make sure that it's getting accessed. Applicants with a question can contact CAJG Processing Center. And again, the numbers are on the screen there. Okay. Before we get to questions on this, I had talked about the new program, the Alberta Jobs Now. I briefly want to give a high-level overview of it. Again, I'm very excited about this program. I think it's a very good program, and my hope is it gets unemployed people back to work and also helps employers get unemployed people back to work. The Alberta Jobs Now program will provide up to $370 million to help private and not-for-profit business with job supports to get thousands of Albertans back to work. Employers can apply for funding to offset the cost of hiring and training unemployed or underemployed Albertans in a new or vacant position. This is a federal provincial investment, and it's the largest training program in Alberta's history. It will support our province recovery, help business reopen or grow their workforce, and give Albertans an opportunity to gain the skills they need in today's job market. Funding. Private sector business and not-for-profit organizations across all industries can apply for funding to reduce the costs of hiring and training unemployed or underemployed Albertans. Additional funding is available for hiring people with disabilities. And again, when you go on the website to check that out, please check into those two different funding options. Employers can apply for a grant to offset salary or training costs, or both, equal to 25% of a new hire's salary, up to $25,000 per employee, or 37% of a new hire's salary, up to $37,500 per employee with a disability. To apply for up to 20 full-time new hires, pre-intake period is, the first intake started May 20th and goes to August 31st, 2021. So it's just opened up. The second intake is September 15th to December 31st, 2021. The third intake will be announced at a later date. Choice to have payments issued in one or two payments. One payment up to 100% of the grant after the new hires have been employed for 52 weeks. Two payments, half of the eligible grant paid when the new hires have been employed for 3 months. The other half paid when the new hires have been employed for 52 weeks. The benefits to Albertans and employers. Employers can apply to the Alberta Jobs Now program to cover wages or training costs or hiring of unemployed or underemployed workers in a new or vacant position. The funding will help employers to reopen or re-expand their operations. Underemployed or unemployed. If you're unemployed or working for fewer than 30 hours a week and looking for a new job, we hope that they let potential employers like yourselves know that they can apply for the Alberta Jobs Now program to cover wages, training costs, if you choose to hire them. Workers cannot apply for the program directly. Albertans with disabilities. Employers who hire persons with disabilities will receive a grant 1.5 times higher than the amount they would receive for other employees. If you have a disability and are looking for work, again, they should be letting employers know so that they can receive the extra grant money through the Alberta Jobs Now program, if you choose to hire them. I'd like to thank everybody for listening today. I apologize if it was in a mundane voice. I'm used to seeing faces and being in rooms with people, but it's 2021 and hopefully very soon we'll go back to that. So I think right now I'll send it back to Taylor and we'll open it up for some questions. And I'd again like to thank Taylor for the invite. I appreciate coming out and talking to everybody. Again, my name is Jeff Cowling. I'm a workforce consultant with Employment and Immigration. If you have any questions after the fact too, I will provide my cell number if anybody wants to get in contact directly with me. But for specific program questions, again, I'll encourage people to get in contact with Canada-Alberta Job Grant directly. They're fabulous, hardworking staff there, and they have a fabulous way to get or let you get in contact with them to help you with specific questions. So Taylor, I will turn it back to you.
Yeah, so it looks like I just have one question here from a little bit earlier in your presentation. Would we be able to apply for CPA professional development training, professional education program through CPA software to assist with studying for final exam?
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to send that question because I'm gonna have to send that question in. So Taylor, would you be able to email me that as long?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. We'll get that emailed to you and then get that response out.
And then what I'll do is I can send the response to you and you can send it back to the person and everybody on the call, or I can send it back to the person directly.
That sounds great.
Okay, again, I just want to thank Taylor for inviting me today. And please, if you have some time, go to the Alberta Jobs Now and have a look at that particular program as well. I'm very excited about it. And I hope it's very useful to all the employers out there, as well as the underemployed and unemployed Albertans.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate your time and your attention. Like I said, if you do have any more questions, I did post Jeff's email in the chat. Feel free to also reach out to myself and I can be the liaison there between Jeff. So yeah, have a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, everybody.